Hello world, it's Lee Kelson coming to you live from our Fire Tech Connect studio here in sunny Queensland, Australia. My guest today started life as a mechanical engineer and went on to found one of probably Australia's most successful software technology companies in EasyDebit. I think in 2014 sold EasyDebit to a US company for the chump change of $305 million. He's since gone on and established an investment fund, Pipe Capital, and is the major shareholder in a new cloud technology company focused on property management called Console. Mick Dempsey, welcome to Fire Tech Connect.
Thank you, Lee. Well, I'm not sure if I deserve the accolades of that introduction, but I'll accept them. I would say nowhere near most successful. I'd say I did okay, but certainly nowhere near most successful. Nowhere near in that. I'm nowhere in that company, elite company.
I think you're being humble, mate. But you know, it's interesting the story about EasyDebit. I know you've told me, you know, that it sort of started out of, which I think a lot of tech companies do, start out of necessity. You know, you had a couple of childcare company or childcare businesses and struggling to get paid. Is that sort of the start
correct.
of EasyDebit?
Yeah. So I think you're right. You know, I think most successful businesses start with a problem that an entrepreneur sees a problem. He thinks and says, you know what, there's got to be a better way of doing this, and then goes about solving for that problem. And then and I think to be successful, then if that solution touches the more people that solution touches, then obviously the more benefit you're giving to the community, and then naturally some of the proceeds flow from that, which I guess that, you know, we call that the addressable market. But really you go, well, how many people am I helping in the community? And the more you're helping, so, you know, like for example, Google or Facebook, they touch a lot of people, and they certainly have, and the revenue follows it.
So a lot of the time, the intrinsic value in a company, you know, we look at cash flows and profitability, but as you're building technology companies, you sort of, you know, I liken it to sort of building a brick wall. You know, you put a couple of bricks up and then someone knocks a few down, and then you put a few more up and someone knocks a few down. But it's really that sort of value that you're building along the way, as you say. I mean, how many customers did EasyDebit have at its peak?
Oh, so at its peak, well, just prior to sale, you know, we had about 16,000 what we call merchants, so they're businesses that we're supplying to. So if you want to compare that to like a childcare center, but then we would have pulled from about just under 2 million customers who were the customers of the businesses. So indirectly, we would have had a couple of million as our customer base.
And so when you got acquired by the US company, you know, I mean, it seems obvious that, you know, they've obviously seen some value in the company, but what do you think it was when companies make acquisitions? They're not always necessarily looking at profitability but you know, potentially the reach that you've got, the customer base you've got, or the leverage that they can take from that company. So what do you think the value was that they saw in EasyDebit?
Yeah, so look, the value for them was the customer base. And so for them to come in and to a country like Australia, though, an American company, them to come in and produce a startup, and then try and get to the position that we were, you know, even for a large multinational with lots and lots of cash, the time it would have taken them to do that, to establish a brand, to establish a customer base, it was far more beneficial, probably far more efficient, far cheaper for them to actually go and acquire. And it did prove that way, because they went in and they acquired the technology and the customer base. And I guess at the time, I hadn't really thought too hard about the value of that customer base, but we'd built it up over 15 years. And you think about all the dollars that go into your marketing and your advertising, and your leather on the footpath that goes into acquiring that customer base. And as actually, you think back, you go, actually, you know what, we have sunk a lot of money into acquiring that customer base. So, and that is a really valuable item for any business. Some people really do overlook it. But yeah, so that's what they did. So they've gone and bought a customer base, and they actually continued and they basically bought it on a forecast growth trajectory and actually achieved those growth trajectories. So I probably sold it too cheap, too early.
Timing's everything, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, one of we were one of the leading payments providers at the time. That was in 6 years ago, 14, and we were probably neck and neck with another competitor. And so they recently sold for about 1.2 bill. So there you go. You never know where it could have landed. Yeah. But hey, I'm happy. There's no use looking back. I'm happy with what we got, and I'm more than happy with the decision that was made back then.
Yeah. And so you've gone on now, and you're the major shareholder in a company called Console. That was an interesting transaction. I think that company was originally listed on the ASX.
Yeah, so you're right. Yeah, so that was an interesting transaction, something that I hadn't done before. So teamed up with Macquarie Bank, who were involved in the sale of Easy Debit. So that's how I established the relationship with them. And I was the major shareholder in an ASX listed entity called On the House. And they approached me and said, would you like to be involved in a privatisation? And then, and I looked at it and thought it was a good deal, like Macquarie as a partner. And away we went. And again, that was a really eye-opening experience as well, to see what goes on and how you privatise a publicly listed vehicle.
Yeah, right. Complex transaction.
Complex transaction, all those silly legal fees, silly legal and accounting fees that come up. Yeah.
The auditors, the legals, the accounting. I was talking to someone the other day about the amount of money
that they munch is just ridiculous. Yeah.
I was talking to someone about that the other day. They're an early stage software company. They've had some interest from a major group because they've got some interesting algorithms. They haven't really built a lot of customers, but they've got some interesting tech. And they were going through some of the gotchas. And I said, well, one of the gotchas is the audit, accounting and legal fees. Don't underestimate that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like pigs with their snouts in the trough.
Absolutely.
You can edit that bit.
And so when you finally exited, what's that? What is that feeling like? Is there part of it that's an empty feeling that, look, now what do I do? Or is it just, yoo-hoo party popper, champagne time? Or
look, you know what? It was certainly quite emotional because it was a business that I'd built up from scratch. We had about 150 employees when I sold it, and I had to say goodbye to everyone. So, and our deal wasn't an earn-out. It was basically, I threw them the keys and they threw me a check. So we had a town hall meeting, just got up and said, look, we've done a deal. And we all had to basically all had to say goodbye. So it was quite emotional. Probably far from euphoric, actually, at that point in time. Maybe a bit melancholic as opposed to euphoric right then. But but then you do have and look, for us, it was about taking the risk off the table. So we got a check that was enough to change my life, generational change as well. So it was all about just de-risking.
Yeah. But, again, there was a fair bit of sacrifice. I know I've heard you say a few times, you lived on fresh air sandwiches for 20 years.
That's true too. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Don't worry. I've had my fair share of blueies turn up at the door. The old guys will know what I'm talking about there.
That's right.
These young guys won't know what I'm talking about.
No, but it is interesting because there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into it, and there's 20 years of grit and resilience and sleepless nights and all of that. Do you think there's a sense that in this day and age where we've sort of popularized the idea of being an entrepreneur, and everybody thinks that you sort of raise a heap of money, and and everyone wears how much they've raised as a badge of honor, and we've sort of lost that grit and determination that it takes to build a business?
Yeah, Yeah, look, it's again, they raise capital, okay, but they raise capital, but every time they do that, they dilute. So they probably don't understand the effect of dilution. So when you do get that exit check, every percent counts.
Yeah.
For me, we're even early on, with the very early days, and there was another couple of guys that were involved originally when we set the business up, and we went and bought a company, shelf company, for $500. In there, it's got your share register, and we go, oh, we'll better allocate some shares, and we just went, oh yeah, well, how about we just we'll allocate it. I think it was like 40, 30, 30. And I said, oh no, look, don't worry about that. Let's just go thirds. And so that 7% probably cost me, 25 mil. So, so it's interesting. That's little decisions. Yeah.
So, but I mean,
but when you're starting, you don't realize that. You don't look at the value of that share and the value of that equity.
Right. So look, I want to,
yeah,
exactly. I want to dig into that a bit because, I've been working with a lot of early stage companies like you, and the understanding of what the dilution means, and what the importance of the cap table and that capital structure to start with. And
the big one is the ESOP as well. So with the employee share option,
yeah.
I think a lot of them start to give out options too early. They don't understand that it is a long. It took me 15 years. It's pretty rare that you build something up in 3 to 5 years and sell it for a decent amount. So I think you have to be really careful with those ESOPs and how you structure them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll see people who haven't really performed walk out with some of your equity, and then whatever you do in the future, they're benefiting from.
Yeah. And we've all heard the stories about the dilution to the point where, we sort of dilute too early, and then when you do go to need to raise a big amount of money to really scale, and you've got some maturity and you've got some traction, and then all of a sudden, the founders potentially are diluted down to next to nothing, changing the dynamics, the control, whole raft of issues.
Yeah, no, and that's very true. So I've heard that, see that happening a lot. And there's that balance there where you certainly need capital to grow, but then you need to retain capital. You need to retain equity as well to try and make sure that you do benefit from the work that you've put in. Yeah. And you do see if there's a change from founder, the business can start to lose its way, because the founder normally has a cause. Like for me, I wasn't getting paid, so my cause was every business deserves to be paid, and that was what we worked towards. But if you do have a change of founder, or another entity comes in and takes control, they can seem to lose that cause, and the business can lose its purpose, and then it starts to flounder if that happens.
So talking about purpose, how important do you think that purpose is for, early stage companies to be really, clear and have a deep seated purpose?
Yeah, look, I think that's paramount purpose. And I probably got onto it a little bit late. I knew what I was doing, but I hadn't really announced it to all the staff and made it visible and put it into all the material. This was our purpose. I knew what my purpose was, but I just hadn't put it out there. So in hindsight, it's one of the first things that you do as a startup is to go, well, and normally most startups, they are founded from some sort of problem that they're solving. So, well, this is what our purpose is. This is what we're doing for the community. And then it just makes it a lot easier to get staff to rally around the cause.
Right.
Which is really what you want. You want your staff to be connected to the business, and you want them to be working towards a common goal, common cause. So that's why, I would really encourage a startup to really, really work on what its cause is and get that sorted right up front.
And obviously you see a lot of pitches, presentations. You get pitched a fair bit, I imagine.
Yes, I do. Yeah. Yeah.
Because usually the
I do
first thing
shuffle
is,
them down the line a bit these days, but a few of them
yeah,
do surface to me. Yeah.
yeah, but it's so when you see these presentations, and I know you do have a filtering, a filtering process now, but um, is there one thing that stands out that you think, if I see another one of those, or I see another one without this, or is there one thing that
Yeah.
sort
Look,
of stands out?
I think it's the value. Some entities, the value they place on an idea. So they've got this idea, and they've got this, might be this problem that they think needs solving, but it's an idea, and then the valuation that they put on that idea just seems to be out of the hemisphere. And you go,
Yeah,
well, you haven't got an MVP, you haven't got a customer, so it's not worth anything. For me, I go, well, that's not worth anything. So unless you can prove that that idea is actually something that a customer does want and is willing to actually take their wallet out of their pocket and pay for it, then it's not worth anything. And it's amazing how many startups come to you with an idea, and they put these crazy valuations on an idea with oh yeah, no, we haven't built this yet, but we need the funds to build this, but we think the idea is worth 3 mil, and it's like, I don't think so. So I see that a lot.
right.
Yeah.
And talking about that, I suppose it touches on the idea of execution. We hear execution is everything, and I see people running around with T-shirts saying execution is everything. I personally think that's crap. I think in the absence of strategy, you can execute the wrong thing, right?
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, how important is strategy, and how do you arrive at a strategy? If you're looking at the console thing, for example, and you're
Yeah.
looking at, and you're trying to evaluate markets and where's the opportunities, and where can we sort of pivot to, where can we double down on? How do you arrive at that strategy, and what's the process for strategic thinking?
See, I think that even goes back to your cause. So you look at your cause and you go, okay, well, what are we here for? Like Easy Debit, for example, we want every business deserves to be paid. Okay, so who are we helping? We're helping the business get paid. So that forms the basis of the decision making. And then your strategy follows that cause. You go, okay, well, any decision that might come to you, as in, oh, let's go down this path over here, and we might go and help some person in the street do a banking transaction. I go, well, hang on, no, our cause is to help businesses get paid. So how does that help that cause? And I'll go, no, you know what, we're not going to do that. We go narrow into our cause. So unless that decision fits that cause, then it just gives you that better direction. I think everything comes from that cause.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, one of the things that I see all the time is that companies seem to think that, if they get some capital or some investment, it's a silver bullet. All I need is 500,000. All I need is $1 million. All I need is 2 million. And then, we're going to be happy days. And my experience has been, well, it actually complicates it. It creates a dynamic that brings other people into play. If you think that you've got problems with employees and customers, add investors into the mix. And,
well, my old man used to say with that one, easy come, easy you're gone. Because that's what can happen. If they get this lump of cash, they don't value it as much as they should.
Yeah.
And before they know it, they'll have flitted and spent it. So that's where sometimes the hard work and the grinding your teeth and the grit means you really value every dollar, and you spend it, or you're spending it all wisely. It's all based on you're spending money based on a return basis. Okay, what's the best way to spend this dollar? What's the return I'm going to get on that dollar? Why am I spending that dollar? Do I need to spend it? Is there a better way to spend it? So that's the sort of evaluation that we did as a startup, when we didn't have the money to be able to be frivolous and waste any. So we had to be really careful when we placed it. I think that's a good discipline that that I teach you. So, I mean, that's just probably one of the risks of getting capital that becomes too easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's right. It makes you a bit more prudent. One of my old business partners used to say, is it going to make us any more sales? Is it going to build any more value in the business? People saying, oh, we need to get an office with a view, or we need a water cooler, or we need some palm trees in here, or whatever it is. He always used to come back to, is that going to help us make any more sales, or is it going to help us build value, retain our employees, or whatever. So I think go on.
Sorry, I just got distracted. Someone's just walked in. So, and then the dog's just about to bark. But
that's right.
So sorry. So just say that one again, because I had something in my mind and I've just forgotten it.
Yeah. Oh, no, so I was just saying that one of my old mentors used to say all the time that, is it going to add value? Is it going to make us any more sales? Particularly when we're looking for sales. Yeah. So when we're making decisions, we're saying, okay, we need some palm trees and a water cooler and a leather couch in our office.
Yeah.
And he'd say, well, what value does that bring us?
Yeah.
Is it going to help us retain employees, recruit better people, make more sales, get more customers?
There's an example of that I just that came up pretty recently as well. It's like, even a little controversial, I guess, but even when it comes to there's a startup that I know of that just recently spent like 150,000 on legals, making sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. And, there were things that when we started that, we ran it with a little bit more risk. So we would do all our own legals, do our own, all our own documents, and spend that money on some things that might generate some revenue. Look, and then there comes a time where you need to dot those I's, cross those T's, but as a startup, I think it's more, you're in a real high risk, high reward type of situation. So I think of some of them, they get a little bit, they seem to be a little bit too conservative and spend their money on some more conservative approaches.
Yes, I think I've seen examples of that, like you, where, we're spending a lot of money on patents and trademarks and things. And I understand we've got to protect IP and we've got to dot I's and cross T's, but, particularly before we've validated or before we've got...
Well, that's the question. What have they got to protect? Yeah, right. They're spending money on protecting something that they don't even know it has any value. So they should be out there proving it has value, and then go, actually, let's protect this, and then go bang and protect it. But then that's probably part of what I'm getting to, I guess, there.
Yeah. But one of the things you've said a number of times to me is, what's the biggest point of validation? It's someone getting their wallet out and...
Exactly. And giving you some money for your project. Exactly. Parting with that money and paying you for your product. You go, okay, now that's validation.
that is validation.
The more customers you get doing that, the bigger the validation. Yeah.
Well, exactly. That's it, isn't it? And I think we've lost a bit of that. We've seen examples like WeWork, in Uber, inordinate amounts of capital being pumped into that, with a fundamentally flawed business model and no path to profitability. And then we have some crisis like this that changes the economic landscape, and they're left, I think Warren Buffett famously said, you find out who's swimming naked when the tide goes out.
Yeah. I know they're interesting, those ones too, isn't it? Yeah. It's amazing, some of those businesses like that. And, look, there's examples of ones that have succeeded. Like, I think Amazon is one that is an example of, like, they had 20 years of losses that, that shareholders propped up and provided capital, and that's proven to be in a model that's worked in that instance. But it's very rare.
Yeah. And we've heard a lot about, over the last couple of months, we've heard about pivots, and, we've seen this huge spike in, things like Zoom and, online retailing, and we've seen the retailing and the hospitality sector sort of be decimated. What's Mick's view of the world moving forward? What do you think it looks like? Are we going to change our behaviours, or as soon as we can, we're all going to go back to normal and forget that it ever happened?
I do think there will be some changes. I think particularly the video links and the video meetings. Even for myself, like, I've got a couple of young kids, and it was actually quite. Well, it was actually quite good not having to drive them to school and drive them to gym and swimming and God knows what. Although Mummy wasn't too happy about the at-home schooling though. But luckily, I wasn't in that line of fire.
I'm sure Steph wasn't happy about that.
She got the nanny in pretty quickly. But that was actually there was some really, I thought it was reasonably enjoyable parts of that. But I think and I certainly have been using video conferencing a lot more than what I did previously, and the more you use it, you go, actually, this is actually pretty good. It actually does. It actually works. It's pretty good. So I think that's definitely going to be a change. People still need. I think people are still going to need offices, and they're still going to need to meet. There is nothing that takes the place of a face-to-face meeting for those really critical meetings where you need to read someone's face, and if you're negotiating, I think you need to have a face-to-face meet. Before like a board catch up, we've been doing our board meetings by video, and surprisingly enough, it's actually been going fairly well. Yeah,
and I think the cost of traveling. Typically, I don't know how many times I travelled to Asia last year, and sometimes I'd travel up there for business, and meetings would, postpone, fall over, be rescheduled, and you'd sort of come back after that week and think, well, that wasn't as productive as it could have been. And the cost and the hotels and the travel.
Very true. Yeah, exactly. The amount of time and money that you save is just amazing.
Yeah. And so what about the future of the Australian economy? We've had this conversation. I think we've been very complacent with our mining and resources. We're seeing things from geopolitical perspective with China and tariffs and sanctions and goodness knows what else. Who knows how that's going to evolve? But one of the big areas of export for us is tourism, and education, our university system. What happens to those sectors? I mean, I saw a statistic on the domestic tourism, and I think it was something around $42 billion was spent, was generated by inbound traffic from international visitors, and the Australians spent about $35 billion traveling overseas. So I mean, that seems to be. So do we redirect, do we redirect that? I think that's the plan, is to try and keep people traveling and domestically. But places like the Gold Coast, where you are, big infrastructure around tourism. What happens to that?
Oh, look, I think the first thing that should happen is that our learned Queensland Premier should open the border up. I think that's just madness. But,
right.
I won't go too much further into that one. But look, I think that, I think generally with Australia, actually, I think there was something in the paper, Cannon Brooks made a comment, and it was, it was something about the politicians complaining about how much, or how little tax that Google and Facebook and those big multinationals, just the lack of tax that they actually do pay in Australia. But then he said, what, all that money is going back to America. He said, and he's right. And he go, well, the solution to that is to have our own Google, have to have our own Facebook. Where are our, then he's put his money where his mouth. He's got with that Atlassian. So, what a business that is. So, so we need more of those. We need to develop more of those here, and that's the solution to the tax issue. That you want to. To the whole lot. If we were the shoe was on the other foot, we had multinational companies, and we're the ones collecting the tax, and it ends up in Australia. Although a lot of the times they do use all those offshore countries to hide tax. But look, basically what I'm saying there is, I think we really, if you look at our standard of education and high cost of wages here. Really, everything, but then you look at the politically and geographically and whatnot, you go, everything points to us we should be a financial hub. It's just, everything points to it. And right now we should be, especially in this crisis, we should just be recruiting the best technology guys in the globe, and we're a flavour of the month. Like if you look at the way that we've handled the COVID, being pretty amazing, I think. You know, people should be scrambling. If you look at America's imploding, Europe's been a basket case for a while. Then you look at the Americas. There's, you know, in Africa, you would think that we should be pretty well positioned to recruit some of the best technology brains in the globe.
You would think so, and you would think we would be leading the world in technology. And you and I have had this conversation a number of times, and we've both sort of shared our frustration at the fact that you look at all of the innovation reports, the World Economic Forum reports, the innovation the index that comes out every year. We flounder. Commercializing technology. We seem to be good at research and development. Our universities seem to be to propagate R&D, and we've had a lot of funding in R&D, but we use Atlassian as an example of a great success, and I suppose safety culture is another one that's just become a great success. Canva is another one.
They're there, all right. Yeah,
they're there.
And I think one of the big things, I did a trip to Israel, and went and visited their tech sector and whatnot, and their chief entrepreneur was there, and asked him the question about tax. Because they've got basically every one of the large multinationals, Facebook, Google, Apple, they're all there. And I said, what's the tax rate here? And he said 30%. I went, oh, all right. That's I didn't think we'd be that high. And I said, what? I said, and then he said, well, we actually do deals for all the multinationals, so they're on sub 5. So that's why they've got all the multinationals there, and they employ all the Israelites. They educate them, and then they're producing. I think they're producing more startups in Silicon Valley on a per capita basis quite easily. So that's obviously something that works. But if you brought that up here in Australia and said, "Oh, we should actually subsidise some of these multinationals with a lower tax bracket," you'd be hitting the head. But that's really what we should do. And if you look at it from a percentage, I think looking at it from a percentage basis is wrong as well, where you go, okay, let's make it 5%. It's really, what's the quantum? So what's the dollars? So 5% might be, who knows how many billion, as opposed to another business which is paying 20% of its tax, or 24%, and only paying a couple of million. But I think if you look at the quantum of tax that they would generate, even at a low competitive tax rate, not only would we'd be getting the tax that we don't have, but then two, we'd be getting all the intellectual property that they bring with it, and all the job opportunities that they bring with them as well. And then that's educating Australians to go on and start their own businesses. Yeah. But I think that for me, that would be one of the big things that I'd be doing if I was in political power. Yeah.
So as you know, just to sort of wrap up, the Fire Tech Connect program is I was approached to sort of head that up on the basis that the Noosa Shire Council nearly got the Peregian hub up there nearly got wiped out in a fire last year, and we had these catastrophic fires over the summer, and I kept, watching it like everyone on the news, just horrified as to what was happening. And when I sort of got approached to head this up, and the federal government has supported this initiative. And I guess the two things that we've looked at in the research that I've done, and talking to a lot of these companies that are either working in fire technologies or have use cases, they're not necessarily focused on emergency services and fire response and prevention and prediction, but they've actually got a really good transposable use case into that sector.
Mm-hmm.
The two things that came out was sort of this idea that I kept talking to these companies and interviewing some of these companies for our program that we're running. And I'd tell Karen about it and she'd say, why aren't we using that? Why aren't we using that? And so the question became, why aren't we using these technologies? Why have we got satellites in the air that we're not embracing? Why have we got people in crow's nests still with binoculars trying to spot fires? Why aren't we using sensors and Internet of Things and technology? Where does that bureaucratic inertia come from?
Yeah. Look, it's almost like why are most of the government departments still filling out forms biros? You know, it's just, I know it's a good question. That's the question that it should be put forward to everyone, is why are we still doing it like that?
Yeah. Why are we still doing it like that? And that's what we're trying to do through this initiative, is to, number one, help the companies that are either coming out of a research and development program or an early stage company. I mean, we're talking with companies like MIA5 that's got robotic fire robots that can go in. Right. We've got another company
that's amazing. Yeah.
It's amazing. And there's another one called Fireball International. They've got 2 satellites. They're actually running the pilot program in California at the moment. The satellites can detect these fires when they're small. The biggest thing you can do with fires, I've learned, is detect them early and snuff them out early response.
Yeah.
And so Fireball International have got satellite technology to spot the fire, send it through to a sensor on a mobile phone tower. The alert goes through to the command center. It all happens, in seconds as opposed to hours. And then there's other things like, mapping of the fire fronts in real time. So we can see evacuation routes, and artificial intelligence and machine learning components that can predict, for example, that's where the fire front's moving based on all of these atmospheric and wind conditions and weather conditions, and that you should evacuate that way, not that way. Real time. Amazing stuff. But we're not using it. I mean, we are starting to, but we're not using it, and particularly in Australia. Obviously, now there's a big push to try and do that. But I mean, how do you drive that adoption and get people to start to? I suppose part of it is the risk. If we're using technologies that's unproven and we don't know, it's a bit like clinical trials on medical stuff. You can't inject people with there's no risk, no reward, is there? You've got to, there's always an element of risk in everything that you do. So, and you've got to, with risk comes the ability to improve things as well. So, you're a bit like the old startup. You just test and measure, pivot, test, measure, pivot. So, and always constantly improving. What's that little saying as well? Don't let perfect get in the way of better. So I should always getting better. Yeah. That's the most important thing. Yeah. And I think that reminds me of one of the stories you told me about when you first started Easy Debit, and it was pitched as an automated product, but it was actually all manual in the back end. You were using the FPOS machine.
Actually, the credit cards we were processing on a merchant terminal, just pressing the buttons. Exactly. But that's an example of getting revenue first until we had enough revenue to automate that process.
Right.
Yeah. And then as soon as we could automate it, we automated it. Yeah.
Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Exactly. That's right.
So we need to open the borders up. You and I need to still catch up for that coffee. I told you I ended up getting the flu, and thought I had COVID, but I didn't. I tested negative.
That's lucky.
So that's good. But thanks, mate, for your time today. I appreciate it. It's been
always
great
a pleasure talking to you, Lee, and look forward to a catch up.
We'll definitely have to catch up in the near future.
Exactly. All right.
Good on you, mate.
See ya.
Okay. Thanks, Mick. See ya.
Bye.